The 24th of August, 1939. 6 years into Nazi rule, Germany's relentless drive toward war is all but set in motion. In Moscow, Nazi Germany's foreign minister Joachim von Ribbentrop meets with Soviet leader Joseph Stalin to finalize the infamous Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, a cynical agreement that will carve up Eastern Europe and ignite the conflict within days. Despite the approaching war, Adolf Hitler remains fixated on Stalin's earlobes, in the hope that they might reveal if his new ally in his attempt to conquer Europe was Jewish or not. Determined to obtain photographic evidence, he sends his most trusted photographer to the talks. The man behind the camera is Heinrich Hoffmann. Heinrich Hoffmann was born on the 12th of September, 1885 in the Bavarian city of Fürth, then part of the German Empire. Young Hoffmann spent much of his youth in the city of Regensburg, where his father, Robert Hoffmann, ran a successful photography studio. From an early age, Heinrich displayed a strong interest in photography, assisting his father in the studio. Between 1901 and 1903, he formally trained in the family business, learning darkroom techniques, portrait composition, and the fundamentals of camera technology. Eager to hone his craft further, Hoffmann spent the next several years working in photographic studios around Germany, Switzerland, and England, experiences which enriched his technical expertise and expanded his professional network. In 1909, Hoffmann settled in Munich, where he opened a studio. Munich, a bustling cultural hub, provided an ideal environment for Hoffmann's emerging career as both a portrait and press photographer. Soon his work caught the eye of local newspapers and publishers, leading to a steady stream of private commissions. This early period of his career highlighted his adeptness in capturing both candid events and carefully staged scenes. When Germany entered into the First World War in August 1914, Hoffmann created one of his most famous and controversial photographs. A picture supposedly showing Adolf Hitler in the cheering crowd at Munich's Odeonsplatz on the 2nd of August 1914, when the Germans were celebrating entry into the war. This picture has long been a source of controversy. While Heinrich Hoffmann promoted it as evidence of Hitler's patriotism from the very outbreak of the First World War, historians have questioned its authenticity, noting that Hitler's facial hair and other details appear inconsistent with surviving wartime photos of him. In the immediate aftermath of the war, in 1919, Hoffmann joined the Bavarian right-wing paramilitary and published a substantial photographic account entitled A Year of Bavarian Revolution in Pictures, depicting chaos in post-war Bavaria and fights between far-left and far-right supporters in Bavaria. Hoffmann's life took a decisive turn in 1919 when he met Adolf Hitler, then a marginal yet passionate political agitator, but with an emerging number of followers. Captivated by Hitler's fervent speeches and nationalist vision, Hoffmann joined the Nazi Party in April 1920. His membership number, 925, placed him among the early cohorts of the party faithful. Even before Hitler officially named him as personal photographer, Hoffmann had begun capturing images of the fledgling Nazi movement, an endeavor that would eventually shape his prominence within the group. As Hitler consolidated control over the party in the early 1920s, he recognized the potential of photography to convey powerful political messages. In 1921, Hitler effectively established himself as the driving force behind the Nazi Party, and later offered Hoffmann the official role as his personal photographer. Almost immediately, Hoffmann became responsible for a tightly controlled and meticulously curated photographic record of Hitler. By restricting outside photographers from publishing Hitler's likeness, the party ensured that Hoffmann's approved images dominated newspapers, magazines, and posters, creating a cohesive and carefully designed public image of the Nazi leader. Hoffmann's personal life intersected increasingly with his professional one. In 1911, he married actress Eva Braun, who bore 2 children, Henriette and Heinrich. Their family life was cut short by Therese's unexpected death in 1928. Hoffmann remarried soon afterward with composer Erna Gripke. Hitler's frequent visits to the Hoffmann household cemented a social bond between them. Hoffmann's daughter, Henriette, grew up among prominent party members, eventually marrying Baldur von Schirach, a rising star within the Nazi regime who served as the Hitler youth leader and later as Reich governor of Vienna. Throughout the 1920s, Hoffmann chronicled key party activities, including the infamous beer hall putsch, which took place on the 8th and 9th of November 1923. Capturing the stormtroopers marching through Munich and even Hitler himself, he produced early propaganda material that depicted the movement's attempts to topple the Weimar government. Despite the putsch's failure and Hitler's imprisonment, these photographs became part of the Nazi heroical propaganda narrative once Hitler returned to politics. From the late 1920s onward, Hoffmann systematically built a large enterprise around his privileged access to Hitler. He had co-founded the magazine Illustrierte Beobachter, meaning Illustrated Observer, an essential propaganda outlet for the Nazi Party. His photographic books presenting Hitler's image sold tens of thousands of copies. They depicted a larger-than-life figure of a future German chancellor, charismatic, paternal, simultaneously stark and approachable. Hoffmann's lens emphasized Hitler's supposedly magnetic eyes and firm leadership qualities, while omitting anything that could be deemed ordinary, vulnerable, or unflattering. For Hoffmann, close ties to Hitler proved exceptionally lucrative. His business expanded from a modest photo studio into a major enterprise, employing hundreds of staff who handled editorial, distribution, and the production of postcards, posters, and commemorative photo albums. Through a legal arrangement, Hitler received royalties whenever his likeness appeared on mass-market reproductions. Meanwhile, Hoffmann himself reaped enormous profits from the authorized prints, which the public purchased in staggering quantities. Heinrich Hoffmann also played an important role in Hitler's personal life. Hoffmann was the connecting thread that led Eva Braun, Hitler's future wife, into Adolf Hitler's inner circle. In his Munich photography studio, Hoffmann employed the teenage Braun to perform everyday tasks such as cataloging negatives and assisting in portrait sessions. This modest role initially offered her only a peripheral glimpse into the Nazi Party's swelling influence. Yet it was here, amid bright flashbulbs and carefully choreographed shots, that Braun first encountered Hitler. Hoffmann, always alert to potential gains for himself in the regime, recognized the chance to facilitate their introduction, further solidifying his own position among the Nazi elite. When Hitler seized power in 1933, Hoffmann's place in the new Nazi state was further entrenched. He became a member of the Reichstag, the German parliament, and grew increasingly involved in ideological and cultural decisions. One of his pivotal roles was helping to oversee Nazi exhibitions that shaped the regime's art doctrine. Hitler, who was himself a failed artist, maintained a strong personal interest in defining acceptable art, rejecting modernist trends, and fiercely condemning anything perceived as degenerate. Hoffmann was appointed to key committees that decided which artworks would be confiscated under Nazi guidelines. In 1937, the Degenerate Art exhibition, organized under the patronage of painter Adolf Hitler and supported by Hoffmann, opened in Munich. The display mocked and repudiated modernist, expressionist, and abstract art. Under the pretext of promoting proper Aryan aesthetics, the regime seized thousands of artworks from public and private collections, particularly from Jewish owners. As a result, Hoffmann not only facilitated the Nazi Party's war against modern art, but also gained access to a vast pool of looted artworks. Although Hoffmann dedicated much of his career to capturing carefully staged images of Adolf Hitler, Heinrich Hoffmann was occasionally tasked with photographing figures outside the Nazi inner circle. In one notable situation, Hitler instructed Hoffmann to take a detailed photograph of Soviet leader Joseph Stalin's earlobes during the signing of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact in August 1939. Hitler's peculiar request arose from his desire to determine whether Stalin, an ethnic Georgian, possessed so-called Aryan traits. Based on the photograph Hoffmann provided, Hitler concluded that Stalin was indeed Aryan, a claim echoed by other prominent Nazis who believed Stalin had ties to Nordic Germanic Aryan blood. This episode underscores the extent to which Nazi racial theories relied on contrived methods of categorizing individuals, and the central role Hoffmann played as a visual chronicler of Hitler's worldview. Hoffmann also played an influential role in selecting and curating pieces for the Great German Art Exhibition that showcased art the Nazis deemed acceptable. His understanding of Hitler's tastes helped ensure he met the Führer's approval. Yet behind the scenes, this power enabled him to profit extensively from forced sales and blatant confiscations, especially as the Nazis intensified anti-Semitic measures. Jewish families fleeing persecution, in many cases, were compelled to sell valuables for a fraction of their worth, or simply had them seized by officials operating under the pretense of Reich law. During World War II, Hoffmann's profiteering from looted art escalated. He and other high-ranking figures in the Nazi hierarchy, such as Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring, amassed extensive private collections of paintings, sculptures, antiques, and other cultural artifacts stolen from occupied territories or expropriated from Jewish owners. As the war turned against Germany, Hitler's unwavering confidence in ultimate victory prevented any serious contemplation of returning stolen property. Meanwhile, Hoffmann enjoyed a high standard of living. He kept his main residence in Munich while also maintaining contacts and networks that spanned the Reich. In 1943, at their peak, Hoffmann's companies employed 300 employees and had a turnover of 58 million Reichsmarks, an equivalent of almost 550 million United States dollars today. Many of his employees had direct roles in producing propaganda or scouting out opportunities for acquiring artwork under questionable conditions. When the Third Reich collapsed in May 1945, Hoffmann was arrested by the US Army, who recognized both his intimate links to Hitler and his profiteering activities. In the immediate post-war period, Allied forces dedicated substantial resources to uncovering and cataloging the art stolen by the Nazis. Hoffmann's name appeared in the Art Looting Investigation Unit's detailed interrogation reports, which identified him as one of the regime's major offenders in cultural plunder. The subsequent denazification process saw him brought before a court on charges of war profiteering. In 1947, Hoffmann received a 10-year prison sentence, and the vast majority of his wealth was seized, though appeals eventually reduced his term to 4 years. Many of the confiscated paintings, sculptures, and other artifacts from his collection were placed under the control of Allied authorities, with the understanding that they would be returned to their rightful owners if possible. In practice, however, post-war restitution efforts often lagged. In a controversial twist, Bavarian authorities returned a large portion of this art collection to Hoffmann in 1956. Hoffmann's family subsequently resold some of these artworks at significantly higher prices than their father had originally paid. After his release in 1950, Hoffmann moved to the village of Ebfach in Bavaria. There, he lived quietly, publishing memoirs. In these accounts, he tried to recast his role as a mere photographer and companion to Hitler, underplaying or denying his complicity in state-sponsored plunder, war crimes, and the production of deceptive propaganda. He claimed ignorance of the larger machinery of genocide, painting himself more as a naive participant caught up in historic events than an active profiteer of Nazi policies. Hoffmann was 72 years old when he died on the 16th of December 1957 in Munich, having largely avoided deeper legal and moral accountability beyond his brief imprisonment and partial asset forfeiture. Though overshadowed by more infamous Nazi leaders, his significance endures in discussions about the role of propaganda, media manipulation, and cultural theft in enabling and funding the Nazi regime. Thanks for watching the World History Channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.